Hello. In this video I will be sharing with you all the books that I read in July. I read so many books, you would not believe it, trust me.
Why you always lying?
So if that's of any interest to you, don't go anywhere.
Subscribe, hit that button. Let's grow together. Share with your friends through any kind of weather. Library without borders, we're reaching for the sky. Join the journey now, come on, don't be shy.
Jambo, Karibu, welcome to my channel. My name is Chilanda and this is Library Without Borders. Hello, hi from your favorite Congolese booktuber. What's up? I hope we're getting used to my new look. Okay, I'm not even gonna mention because yeah, it's already natural. Okay, so check my curls. I didn't even comb my hair. I just put oil and yeah. So anyways, you guys, so before we get into today's video, I just wanted to say that this summer has been really busy. It's been different than the other summers past. I'm telling you, July, it was really busy, you guys. Apart from the kids swimming classes, I also had my husband who has a side hustle on the side, which is catering. Y'all, my baby can cook, okay? Like, he can cook. So anyway, so yeah, and it's people wanted to taste his food, so every weekend he was catering, y'all. And I was there with them, with the kids, because I gotta help. And at the same time I also was doing overtime, right? Because they were offering so many overtime, and I had all these plans of maybe traveling, not like outside of Canada, like maybe like in different parts of Canada. But so July, it was really tough for me to read, and I realized that I didn't read a lot of physical books, like even less the books that I had chosen to read for the month of July. So I mostly listened because I was on the go. Most of the books that I'm going to talk to you about, I listened to them on audio. So without further ado, I was joking, y'all, when I said I read so many books.
Oh my god, stop fucking lying.
I was joking. I only read, so technically I read 5 books, but I didn't check the date. So the 5th book that was supposed to be for the month of July, I actually talked about it in the month when I wrapped up my month of June. So it was Zeal. So Zeal, when I rechecked my notes, it said that I read it on July 1st. So technically it should have been part of the month of July. So it would have meant that I read 5 books, but because I talked about it in my June wrap up and it was part of the 8 books for June, I technically read 4 books in July. So that's the discrepancy there. So first off, I'm going to talk to you about this book, A Trail of Crab Tracks by Patrice Ganeng. And this book was actually translated by Amy B. Reed, author of When the Plums Are Ripe. I actually have the book over there, and I actually hauled it in my book haul video. Now this book actually took me the whole month to read, y'all. Like, it's like the writing is small, and it took me like almost 4 weeks to read this book. So I technically do not get into slumps. Like I've never been into a slump. It's simply lack of time for me to read this book. So it was a tough read in the sense that, first off, it was hard to get into it because at some parts I found the book very boring, very slow. But it's a story set in Cameroon during the Civil War in Cameroon in the 1960s. And we follow Nidhap. Nidhap, he's the father of Tanu who lives in the United States. Okay? So essentially this story is about a father who has this very strange relationship with his son Tanu. And when he arrives in the United States, it's because I guess the son wanted him close so he could take care of his health, because his health was failing. And as they live there, Nidhap meets Tanu's friends, and one of those friends was a poet. And the reason why I mention it, it's important. He was a poet, and then at some point in the story, this is the beginning of the story, the poet has his wife, and like they're together at the poet's house, they're talking, and they start talking about war. And the poet mentions that there is a show or a theater where they will be enacting the American Civil War, and Nidhap is invited to go check the enactment of that American Civil War. And once he get there, that's when the story picks up. Basically, he is now reminded of the war that he himself lived in Cameroon, and that's how we begin to hear the story of Nidhab, how he's telling the story to his son. And boy, oh boy, was it a war story. Let me just read my notes, and then I'll also read to you my summary. So my notes, I have Bengakte. It's a city in Cameroon. We have the Bamileke, which is the essential one of the tribe or the people in Cameroon, and that's the main tribe that we follow in this particular story. We have the Bamileke versus Bamoun tribe, or a people, I said. There's a civil war brewing, and it has reached the hospital. So there is a hospital in Cameroon there where there are whites working in that hospital, and when the war begins, usually, you know, hospitals, churches are sort of exempt from like being attacked, but in this case the war is reaching the hospital. Some members are being killed, and the beginning of the war was 1956. We have what we call the sinistrés. The sinistrés are made up of different people. You have so like different backgrounds, okay? So the main people or the main characters that you will hear throughout the story, you have Nyamsi. He's a friend of Nidhap. Nidhap is the father of Tanu. You have Mensa. She's the sister of Nguchu. Nguchu is the wife of Nidhap, hence the mother of Tanu. And you have, I wrote here, France involvement. I'll talk about France's involvement in the Cameroon War. Yeah, I wrote here, Bamileke people did not submit to the French. So there you have a bit of my notes, but yeah, so Nidhap went through a brutal war in Cameroon, and at some point in the book you hear about Nidhap talking about how a brother is killing a brother, because essentially that's a civil war, you know. It's Cameroonians versus Cameroonians, Americans versus Americans, Congolese versus Congolese. That's the civil war. And I just want to read you guys a few quotes that I tabbed here. You see, we Americans haven't had a war on our territory for more than 100 years, even if the United States has instigated many civil wars around the world. Sounds familiar? Even if the United States wages war all around the world, almost every year, and even if this is the most belligerent country of all. Look at Syria and Iraq. Even Obama didn't change anything in the end. So the reason why I mentioned this, it's because, remember how I told you about the enactment of the Civil War. And they're just having a conversation, and the poet is just explaining to Nidhap how the reason why basically there's always this enactment of the American Civil War is because, I don't know, Americans miss fighting amongst each other. I don't know. But that's essentially where the conversation is leading to. And then here I have another quote that says, that's how they are in those countries. They don't want the sick. They don't want the young kids. Just what do they want, huh? Trump said it. They don't want anyone anymore. Now, the reason why I tapped that, obviously because of Trump said they don't want anyone anymore. I'm not sure when he wrote this book, but I was curious. I was really curious about that, but it must have been copyright 2022. First paper edition 2023. Okay, so it's not that far. So it was appropriate. I thought that was just funny that he mentioned Trump, and look at the times in which we're living. Another quote here. We are at war, a civil war. Brother against brother, father against son, son against father, daughter against mother. And all of that under the aegis of the French, who, like Pontius Pilate, pull the strings and keep their hands clean. Ah, the legacy of the colonists, you know? It's impossible not to choose sides, impossible to remain neutral when you see your brothers being massacred. And then I'm going to read you guys two more quotes. Since the start of the Civil War, so since 1956, many doctors had been abducted and there'd been many assassinations of medical personnel too. What happened here wasn't unique. Yeah, remember I told you that the war started reaching the hospital, even though the hospital should be neutral because they're there to like, take care of us, like the enemies and the people. They really are supposed to be neutral, but hey. And the last one, I forgot to tell you that this book is very triggering. It's very graphic in its depiction of civil war. Okay, so I'm gonna read this part because I need you guys to know that human beings are horrible. Don't matter the color, they're horrible. I saw groups of 4 men gang rape women, and after they raped them, run their sabers through their vaginas and sever their breasts. I saw men grab infants by their feet and smash them against walls, rush into houses with their sabers outstretched and come back out holding the heads of small children dripping with blood. I saw pregnant women disemboweled, their unborn children hacked to pieces and tossed into the courtyard. I saw men hanged from the roofs of houses. The cruelty of the Bamoun is unequaled. It seems they still cook up the bones of those they vanquished after eating their flesh. They use bones instead of wood. Semengu soldiers didn't need to wage war themselves. They just watched, moving in only to stop people from escaping into the forest. And then there's the French. There was a helicopter circling above, spitting fire. The gates to the town were shut. Someone must have given the order to kill everyone. Oh guys, you thought that was brutal. I'm not done. Why would I spare you guys? I went through it. You need to go through it. He wore sunglasses to make an impression. Sometimes too, accompanied by his 4 Amazons, he'd go into the neighborhoods and oversee the judging of the Feng Wongs. His Amazons were women he'd assigned to his service and who, it was said, made sure that when his sentence came down, and it always came down, it was carried out. Whether they used their machetes and cut down the condemned right in their homes at night, or whether they took them out in the bush and split their heads open. They were feared much more than the commander himself because of their ferocious reputation. In Mombo, people still recall when they cut off and ate a man's testicles. Singhab trusted no one but them because they were his sisters, meaning that they weren't just Bamileke but Laikheim from Bandinko. They were also the ones who sent him to 7th heaven. At least, that's what people whispered. So, as you can see, I tabbed this book. Like I said, it's essentially the depiction of the Civil War, its consequences, its legacy, and the involvement of foreign countries such as the French. So, as I was reading Cameroon, I was reminded of the war in Congo and us also having over 200. Is it 200 tribes? We have so many different tribes in Congo. Over 200 dialects, languages spoken, and we also went through many civil wars. And also right now you guys are all aware that there's still a war going on. This time not civil, but we're being attacked by a different country. So Nidhab was basically telling his son how he went through that war. And remember I mentioned some names. Guchu is the mom. And what I love about Guchu and Nidhab is that they had this love that was still developing. They were really young when they fell in love, and when the war happened, because Nidhab had been accused of being basically, how do you call those, like when they think you betrayed the people, how do you call them, okay, once my husband remembers the word he's gonna put here about like when you've betrayed the people and you're no longer to be trusted, you're obviously the enemy of the people in the country. So he had to be on the run, and while he ran, he met other people that were also running, including the Sinistre, which I mentioned, who are the people who were fighting against the government, you know? And he will be part of that group, and he will be separated from Guchu, Tanu's mom, for years. But then they will eventually get together. There's also Mensa, who's the sister of Guchu. She was wild, you know? She was married, and she was married to actually a military. So a high function man. Unfortunately, that man was always gone in business, right? So while she stayed, she was from a village, but she was moved in Douala. I think it was Douala, or the capital of Cameroon. And she lived there, and she met this other man with whom she fell in love. And what I loved about that specific clandestine love affair was the way she felt women. Like, even the description, the way the man describes the love between her and this guy, the love affair, and the way her body was just coming alive. I wasn't mad at her, because when you look at the man she's married to, he's responsible for killing people in her village. Her husband was responsible for the killings in her villages, and you guys saw the descriptions of how people were being killed. But don't fret, karma does come back around for her husband. Anyways, apart from that, there's also Tanu, who's living in the United States. He's a teacher. Is he a teacher? I think he's a teacher. And we don't really hear about his life per se, you know, like the whole book is really truly about the Civil War and his father and what he went through. We do hear about Tanu just a little bit, because he's going through it with his wife, you know, in the sense that they have a little daughter, and that daughter does not sleep alone, but she's always sleeping with with her parents. And obviously the man has needs, and he begins an affair, and that will blow in his face. And I think while that is blowing in his face, that's also another aspect that will get him closer to his dad, because his dad will also tell him about all the relationships that he went through during the war. Before I conclude this story, as I mentioned, it's a bit slow at the beginning, but I think it's an important story to read about, especially if you, like me, you love historical fiction, and you're also on a quest to read more diverse stories about Black people, the Black experience, and the African continent. I think it's an important story to read. Nidhab obviously survived against all odds. He was a surgeon, not a surgeon, but he worked in the hospital that I mentioned at the beginning. And there at the hospital, there was a doctor who was there, neutral, who helped a lot of the kids and women and people there. But she unfortunately met an untimely death as well, because it was in the throes of war. But the killing there was a lot of killing. Like, I remember when I finished that book, my husband can actually testify. I was like, wow, really? And there's a powerful being who created the same people, these people, and he just saw how infants were being smashed to the wall. Okay, what can I say? And you guys know that even if it's a fiction story, it is always based on actual events. So I've heard so many stories of Congolese women and children being killed in all kinds of ways that this does not surprise me. It just, the surprise is that it happened in Cameroon, really, but it wasn't really surprising. So I would recommend. Okay guys, I'm going to conclude. It's not going to be long because I didn't read that many books. I learned of the Bamileke people and of various tribes in Cameroon. I learned of the Sinistre during a civil war that was fueled by the French. I learned of how brothers killed brothers, how Nidhab became a doctor who helped the general population, and how he became most wanted as well. Many families suffered through the war. I said my favorite character was Mensa, the sister who had that love affair. I said it, and I said what I said, okay? What did I say? Favorite quote. Slavery, forced labor, we are the Sinistre born of very long catastrophe. History was wrestled from our hands long ago. And I said page 303. And I said I will recommend. So this is my summary. I said I will recommend, and it's 4.75 star. It was so brutal for it to be like a 4-star, but I did like the writing, and it was a bit slow, so that's why I didn't really give it a full 4-star. But it's a good book to read, guys. I would definitely recommend. So next, in the physical books, I didn't read them in this order. Actually, this was my last book that I read for the month of July, but it's this book. Christy Woodson Harvey, The Summer of Songbirds. I mean, it's just, for this book ain't too complicated. It's definitely not, you know, it's two complete different books. So this is a light book, and for anybody who's into summer camps, who are into friendship, like female friendships, this was it. who are into second chance romance, this was it. And who are into different voices or different character, or multiple character voice stories, this was it. So in this book we followed Daphne, Mary Stuart, and Lanier. There are kids who grew up together, and they're in this small town. Oh yeah, small town romance as well, friendship if you'd like. And they grew up into this summer camp that they called Camp Holy Springs, okay? And they've been there basically, I think it was Daphne's mom who was there, and Daphne's grandma who was at Holy Camp. So it was a multi-generational camp, and these three girls went there from the time they were really young, every summer, well into their adulthood, right? And Daphne, her story is that she has a mom who was into drugs and does pass away due to overdose. So do look out for those triggers, please. It's not that triggering, but there is mention of like overdose and drug use, right? So just be aware of that. But she's obviously prone to also use, and unfortunately she also had a father who didn't really take care of her, and she went into drug use. But when she grew up, an event occurred that got her to basically change her life around, and she was sober for 7 years. Okay, so that's her story. Then we have Lanier, she was from a normal family where she has two parents who love her, she has a brother, and then there's her. So she basically grew up normal, but she just had that close friendship with Daphne, to the point where she had her parents adopt Daphne because, you know, her mom passed away, her dad was a deadbeat dad. So they're best friends because of those circumstances. But there's also the aspect that Daphne falls in love with her brother. Again, they will be intertwined. There will be events that will make Lanier feel like, okay, is she really good enough for my brother because she was using, even though she's been sober, right? There's that. And she's also getting ready for her wedding. But her fiance is not who he seems. That's her story. Then we have Mary Stuart. She's basically that friend that keeps everybody together, you know, like Daphne and Lanier are always going at each other, and Mary Stuart is the one that basically is the glue to that trio. Okay, so the only thing I want to say about this book is that the author wrote the love story of Daphne and Lanier in a sense where they both had a second chance at love with the same man that they fell in love with when they were young. And to me, I found that really odd, simply because I would have preferred for one of the character to fall in love with her ex or somebody with whom she was in love the first time, but two will both also fall in love with their exes. I don't know, but there will be some things to surmount. Best believe that it won't be easy for those love relationships to flourish. At the same time, there is June, who's Daphne's aunt. Her story is that she has been taking care of the Holy Spring camp, and unfortunately she has fallen under dire circumstances where the camp, hence the story, will need to be either sold or they will need to amass enough money to save Holy Camp. And that's how you see June, who's the aunt of Daphne, the sister of Daphne's mom who passed away, come together. And throughout the book, at the beginning of the story, the middle of the story, till the end, you go back in the past of each character, what they've been through, what they faced, and how they, you know, became who they became. Each character, you hear their story from, you know, from their past, their present, and future, and how they finally come together in order to save the camp. And yeah, it's a feel-good story. Okay, it's a feel-good story. It's nothing to make yourself think, but it was good after reading such a story. So the books that I listen on Audible, I obviously listened to Amari and the Night Brothers with my son, with my children. I thought it was a cute story. Amari, I like the way the author portrayed Amari, this young girl whose brother has disappeared, and her mother, you know, don't know where he is. And one day there's this person who comes with like a suitcase or something, and obviously it's supernatural. And this suitcase, it tells her that there is a message that was left for her by Quentin, who's her brother. She lives in the project, you know, and she has to go to this institution of, you know, where they you guys know when you go to those institutions and then they help you harvest your power and teach you how to, you know, harness your power and things like that. And she goes to that school, and obviously she meets some mean people, including Dylan, and Dylan's sister, who's like a mean person towards Amari. And you also hear about Amari, like her upbringing, basically her living in the project. And I like that the author also sort of was obvious whenever she described the characters in Amari. We knew that she was talking about white people, and she knew we were talking about Asian people, or we're talking about black people. And it's weird because my kids hadn't seen the picture of Amari and the Knight brothers, so when they saw it, they're like, oh my gosh. So when they talked about Dylan is blonde and white, and I'm like, why? They did describe him as blonde and white. They're like, oh no, I imagined them black and all that. So I'm like, that's okay. That's why your imagination is there, for you to imagine these characters. Even if they're being described a certain way, you can still use your imagination to see them as you want. You know, I wasn't mad at that, but it was just, I thought that was cool for my kids to be like, oh, that's not how I imagined Dylan. So that means they were listening. And I really like the whole supernatural creatures that were described in this book, and the fact that, you know, Amari's a magician, and she's one of a kind magician, and unfortunately she is feared by the order, basically, because the magician that they've met, like Moreau, they've never been good. You know, they're there to annihilate, you know, other creatures and basically cause war. So, and Amari is trying to prove to them that she is not like Moreau. And I liked the action. There was enough action, not too many. It wasn't too bloody. It was good. I enjoyed the book, and I will definitely continue with the series with my children. So that was that. And unfortunately, I did not have time to write. I did not write, but I would definitely rate it a 3-star because my kids enjoyed it. I asked them, and I also enjoyed it. I liked it, so it's a 3-star. It looks like all my books so far are either between 3 and 4. I have yet to have a 5-star, except for Rage of Dragons. That was the only 5-star so far this year, and we're already August. That's not good, y'all. So that was 3 books, and next I read The Summer Girl by Jenny Blackhurst. It's so funny because I didn't know I had read another thriller by her, because all her thrillers are free on Audible. So the one I read by her, The Final Wife, which I read in June, so now I read The Final Girl. So basically in The Summer Girl, again, I picked it up because it had summer, we're in summer. It was a good thriller, you guys. I forgot to rate it, but I wrote my summary here. What did I say? Holly is Claire's little sister who moved to a small island in Massachusetts for a summer job. Only problem is she is no longer responding to Claire's phone calls. Worried for her sister's safety, Claire decides to go looking for her. So basically that's the summary. And my review: it was a good thriller. The twist at the end did in fact shock me. Some aspects were sad. So I don't want to spoil it for you guys, because obviously it's a thriller, and you know thrillers, you can't really say too much, but essentially it's what I said. Holly is missing. Claire lives in a different part of town, and it's English, but it's English. When I say English, y'all know I mean like London, UK, from those parts. So I listened to Audible, so I definitely enjoyed the accents. She goes there and she's trying to find her sister, and while she's trying to find her sister, she's starting to learn these things and the life that her sister had, and especially the people with whom she interacted. And those people are I forget, but they're brothers. There are 3 of them, and one of them I think is Ryan. And Brian was the one that wasn't really pretty, but he's the one who sort of went out with Holly, and he was the one last seen with her. And then there are 2 brothers. The oldest one is the pretty one, like very handsome, the one that was trouble. So when she starts to try to find out what happened to her sister, she goes to the police. She's like, okay, my sister's missing. And they're like, well, her stuff is still there. It doesn't look like it was, you know, somebody broken, or that she left in haste. And she's like, my sister's missing. I haven't heard from her. And apparently she quit her job, which is most not likely, because she went there for that summer job, so she can't quit. So obviously the police are a bit reluctant to take on the case, so she has to do all the detective work by herself, and what she uncovers is very brutal. She starts to discover that there was another girl that went missing and her case was never resolved. It was actually, what is it? It was classified as a suicide, which wasn't really a suicide because there were like stab wounds, multiple stab wounds on her. Then she meets this girl who's the sister of that girl that went missing. And guys, when I tell you the twist at the end, I was like, oh, okay. But the sister of that girl that went missing will be helping Claire in her journey to find her sister. It was a good thrilling book. For a thriller, it was good. It's 3 stars. There's no thriller book that I can be like, oh my god, I have yet to come onto one of those books. But yeah, it was good. So I'm gonna put it at a 3 star, okay? And yeah, 3 stars. And then what I read in July, remember how I said, so Zeal is the one that was for June, and then Junie is the one that I read in July. So technically I read 1, Trail of Crab, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. So yeah, you guys, so I've already spoken about Junie, which was supposed to be my July apparently, according to my note, but I already spoke about it in my wrap up of June. So there you have it, all the books that I read in July. This was like, ever since I started, you know, filming my booktube channel, I have not read so little books in a month, but you know, it's okay. Like many booktubers are saying lately, we're not in a race. We're here to enjoy the ride. If we can read 1 book, that's enough. So on that note, you guys, thank you so much for sticking with me. I mean, I forgot to say welcome to my new booktuber. So welcome to all of you who are new to my channel. I am so happy that you found yourself in my corner, and I hope that we're gonna develop a bond, you know, for as long as I do this. Okay, so yeah, so please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and I will see you in my next video. And if you don't want to do all of that, please put in a love emoji and 4. Thank you.